I had the measles once, and that went away.
The voice of your conscience is different, Yogi.
There is a bear wearing a collar and a pork pie hat who has been stealing picnic baskets on American television for over 65 years. He has never once successfully gotten away with it without consequences. He has never once stopped trying. And somewhere in that specific, repeating, cheerfully absurd failure is the reason an entire generation still smiles when they hear the phrase, "smarter than the average bear." Yogi Bear is one of the most recognizable animated characters in the world. He was the first cartoon character to become more popular than the show he was created to support, essentially stealing the spotlight from his own program and demanding his own series before anyone at Hanna-Barbera had planned for it. He was the product of two borrowings so obvious that one of them nearly produced a lawsuit and was performed by a voice actor whose productivity across the studio's output was so extraordinary it has probably never been matched. Today, 12 facts about Yogi Bear, spanning the original 1961 show, the films, the revivals, and the strange, far-reaching legacy of a picnic basket thief from Jellystone Park. One of these facts involves a real-life baseball legend who had to remind himself that his nickname wasn't actually his name. And the one we close on explains why Yogi Bear matters in a way that goes considerably deeper than the baskets. Let's count it down. 12. Yogi Bear was a supporting character who stole his own show. Before the Yogi Bear Show existed, before Yogi had his own series, his own feature film, his own network revivals, and his own campground franchise, he was a background character in someone else's program. Yogi Bear debuted in October 1958 as one of 3 segments on the Huckleberry Hound show. Huckleberry Hound was the lead, a slow-talking, cheerfully philosophical blue hound dog intended to be the star of the program. Yogi was the supporting act, appearing in the middle segment, 7 minutes of picnic-stealing antics sandwiched between Huckleberry's adventures and a third short. The problem, from Hanna-Barbera's perspective, was that audiences found Yogi considerably more interesting than the show's actual star. Viewer mail indicated clearly and repeatedly that the bear in the collar was the segment people were looking forward to. Merchandise inquiries centered on Yogi, the specific combination of his personality, scheming, verbose, convinced of his own brilliance, perpetually outmaneuvered, connected with viewers in a way the gentler Huckleberry Hound didn't. By 1960, the decision was made to give Yogi his own show. The Yogi Bear Show premiered on January 30th, 1961, in syndication. Huckleberry Hound continued without him. Yogi's supporting segment slot was given to a character called Hokey Wolf. Hokey Wolf was a perfectly acceptable character who nobody particularly remembers today. Yogi Bear became a franchise. He had pulled off, in the most literal sense, exactly what he was always attempting. He had taken something that wasn't supposed to be his and made it entirely his own. This outcome was genuinely unusual in the history of television animation. Supporting characters becoming more popular than the lead is common enough. Supporting characters getting their own spin-off is common enough. But Yogi Bear accomplished something rarer. He eclipsed the show that created him so completely that Huckleberry Hound is now largely remembered as the program Yogi Bear used to appear on. The original star became the footnote. The supporting act became the headliner. The picnic thief stole the whole show, and nobody who watched it was particularly surprised.
Come on, Yogi, get up. The new season has started.
Boo Boo?
11. His voice was Art Carney, and his name was Yogi Berra. This entry covers both of Yogi Bear's most foundational debts simultaneously because they are each extraordinary pieces of creative borrowing that deserve to be named directly. Yogi Bear's voice, performed by Dawes Butler across the entire original run from 1958 through 1988, was modeled explicitly on Art Carney's portrayal of Ed Norton on The Honeymooners. Norton's specific verbal rhythm, his slightly theatrical delivery that read as intelligence without quite being it, became the template. Butler took that rhythm and built Yogi from it. The way Yogi addresses Boo Boo, the way he pitches his schemes, the way he reacts to Ranger Smith's exasperation. All of it flows directly from Carney's Norton. The name was something else. During character development, various names were considered: Bumpkin Bear, Yucca Bear, Huckleberry Bear, before the team landed on Yogi. The specific logic of that choice is where things get complicated. At that moment in American popular culture, the name Yogi was almost exclusively associated with one person, Lawrence Yogi Berra, the New York Yankees catcher, who was one of the most celebrated athletes in the country. Barbera insisted the similarity was coincidental. Almost nobody in the animation industry believed him. Walter Brash, author of a book on animated character naming, wrote bluntly, "Whether coincidence or not, it is difficult to find anyone else in the industry who believes it." The evidence in the Hanna-Barbera production history suggests the name of Yogi Berra specifically came up during the naming process and was subsequently adopted. Two borrowed identities, one unforgettable character, and a baseball player about to find out his nickname had a new resident in Jellystone Park.
But I cured that bear completely.
You cured him? How?
Well, I made him think.
10. Yogi Berra tried to sue, and then made the best joke about it. Yogi Berra was not pleased. The Hall of Fame catcher found himself watching a cartoon bear on television who shared his nickname and a broad comedic personality not entirely unlike his own public image, and who was becoming one of the most recognizable characters in American popular culture. Berra reportedly considered filing a defamation lawsuit against Hanna-Barbera. Some accounts describe a formal legal action that was withdrawn. Others describe a threatened suit that never formalized. What is consistent across all sources is that Berra looked at the situation and initially believed he had grounds to object. Hanna-Barbera's defense was that Yogi Bear was an entirely original character and any resemblance was purely coincidental. This defense was, as noted, considered implausible by essentially everyone familiar with the circumstances, but Berra's situation had a complication that ultimately undermined his legal position. Yogi was not his real name. Lawrence Peter Berra had acquired the nickname as a teenager playing American Legion baseball when a teammate noticed his resemblance to a movie newsreel image of a Hindu yogi sitting cross-legged. He had never legally changed his name. A lawsuit over the use of a nickname he didn't officially own was always going to face difficulties. Berra eventually dropped the matter, and years later, when asked about it, he delivered what is genuinely one of the great pieces of Yogi Berra deadpan. "I was going to sue the Yogi Bear program for using my name until somebody reminded me Yogi isn't my real name. It's Lawrence." The bear with the borrowed name was safe, and the man with the borrowed name became, in time, almost as famous for his wit as for his baseball.
The season doesn't officially start until Yogi Bear makes his appearance.
9. The collar was an animation budget decision, not a fashion choice. One of the most recognizable visual elements of Yogi Bear's design, the white collar and necktie combination, is something most viewers accept as simply part of his charm. An anthropomorphic bear dressed in something between casual and business casual. It fits the character perfectly. It was also primarily a cost-saving measure. Hanna-Barbera pioneered what became known as limited animation, an approach that involved keeping as much of each frame static as possible and only animating elements that absolutely needed to move. The collar served a specific practical function in this system. By giving Yogi a fixed collar at the base of his neck, animators could keep his body completely static and only redraw his head when he was speaking. Without the collar, the join between the moving head and the static body would be visually jarring. The collar provided a natural visual break that made the movement read as coherent. The same logic applied to the hat. It gave the character a fixed reference point for the head across frames. The necktie added visual distinctiveness that read clearly on the relatively low resolution of early television screens. What audiences interpreted as stylistic personality, a bear who dressed better than his circumstances required, was engineering. The most beloved elements of Yogi Bear's visual identity were solutions to production problems. And this is true of almost every Hanna-Barbera character from the era. Ranger Smith's uniformed formality, Boo Boo's small bow tie, the repeated visual grammar across the studio's entire output. They weren't making art with unlimited resources. They were making art inside severe constraints, and they made the constraints look like choices. That distinction is worth sitting with. The Hanna-Barbera model was criticized at the time by animation purists who valued the visual richness of theatrical shorts, but the studio's approach democratized animation in a way that theatrical production never could have. By making animation affordable to produce at scale, Hanna-Barbera made it accessible to broadcast, and broadcast delivered it into living rooms across America every week. The collar on Yogi Bear wasn't a compromise. It was the price of admission for a character who otherwise wouldn't have existed at all. If the real story behind the cartoons you grew up with is what you're looking for, subscribe. This is what we do every week.
I'll take it to the woods. You'll never see me again.
Stop, I can't stand it.
8. Smarter Than the Average Bear was designed to be simultaneously right and wrong. Yogi Bear's most repeated claim about himself, that he was smarter than the average bear, is, when examined directly, a genuinely strange boast for a character who was consistently outwitted by a park ranger and repeatedly failed to obtain his primary objective. But the line operates on 2 levels simultaneously, and the writers at Hanna-Barbera understood exactly what they were doing. On the surface level, it's cheerful self-delusion, a character who assesses himself with enormous generosity, regardless of available evidence. Yogi wasn't a character who knew he was failing. He was a character who was always on the verge of success. The fact that he didn't succeed was the joke, but the joke only worked because his confidence was completely sincere. On a deeper level, the line was meta-commentary. The average bear in Jellystone would be living a normal bear's life, foraging, sleeping, avoiding humans. Yogi, whatever his failures, was doing something considerably more complex. He was scheming. He was talking in complete sentences. He was operating in a world of human social dynamics that an ordinary bear wouldn't have attempted. He was, by that specific measure, genuinely smarter than the average bear, just not smart enough to actually get away with it. The catchphrase captured the show's entire comic engine in 5 words, a completely sincere self-assessment that was simultaneously exactly correct and completely wrong. That's harder to write than it looks, and it became one of the most quoted lines in American animation history. 7. Don Messick voiced 2 characters in every scene. If Daws Butler was the visible creative engine of the Yogi Bear Show, Don Messick was the invisible architecture holding everything together. Messick voiced Boo Boo Bear, Yogi's cautious, conscience-driven companion. He also voiced Ranger Smith, Yogi's primary antagonist. He also voiced characters across 2 of the show's other segments, Yakidoodle and Snagglepuss, plus various secondary roles throughout the run. In a typical episode, Messick might voice the character Yogi was trying to befriend, the character trying to stop him, and the character watching from the sidelines. The dynamic between Boo Boo and Ranger Smith in the Yogi Bear Show is, when you become aware of it, remarkable. Both characters exist primarily to react to Yogi's schemes, one with affectionate concern, the other with frustrated institutional authority. Both voices come from the same actor. Messick was playing opposite himself, providing both the warning and the consequence for the same character's behavior in the same scenes, often in rapid succession. He received far less public recognition than Butler for his contribution to the Yogi Bear universe, but remove his voice, and the show loses 2 of its 3 principal characters. Messick was not the star. He was the frame that held the star in place. That is, arguably, the most underrated skill in any ensemble, being so good at everything else that the actual star can afford to be themselves. Messick continued voicing Hanna-Barbera characters long after the original Yogi Bear run ended. He was the voice of Scooby-Doo from the character's debut in 1969 through 1997. Nearly 30 years on another franchise-defining character, as well as Papa Smurf and dozens of other roles. By any reasonable accounting, Messick was one of the most prolific and most consistently employed voice actors in the history of American animation. He died in 1997, 9 years after Butler. Between them, they had voiced the core of one of the most productive animation studios ever assembled across one of the most consequential decades in American broadcast history.
I have often referred to it as a sort of controlled schizophrenia.
Yes.
6. Hey There, It's Yogi Bear was Hanna-Barbera's first theatrical film. In 1964, 3 years after the Yogi Bear Show had established the character as one of the most commercially successful animated properties in America, Hanna-Barbera made a decision that was entirely unprecedented for the studio. They made a feature film. Hey There, It's Yogi Bear was the first full-length theatrical animated film ever produced by Hanna-Barbera. The studio had built its entire reputation on television animation. Quick, efficient production of weekly content for syndication markets. Theatrical animation was a different proposition entirely. Longer runtime, higher visual expectations, and the need to sustain a narrative across more than an hour rather than across 7 minutes. The film sent Yogi and Boo Boo on an adventure outside Jellystone, into the wider world of human society, after Yogi is captured and sent to a zoo. His motivation for escaping is partly the usual desire for freedom and partly his feelings for Cindy Bear, the recurring love interest from the television series. The film was a musical, requiring Hanna-Barbera to develop their animation at a level of detail and sustained quality the television format hadn't demanded. It performed respectably at the box office for a first theatrical venture from a studio best known for 7-minute segments. What it proved was that Yogi Bear had enough audience loyalty and enough character richness to sustain a longer narrative. That proof mattered for the decades of productions that followed. Television movies, holiday specials, and ultimately the 2010 live-action hybrid film that brought the character to a new generation through the specific medium of CGI animation combined with live footage. 5. The character appeared continuously on American television for nearly 6 decades. This is the fact that places the Yogi Bear franchise in its proper historical context. The original Yogi Bear Show ran from January 1961 to January 1962. But Yogi Bear's presence on American television was nowhere near finished. Yogi's Gang ran from 1973 to 1975, a significantly different show in which Yogi and his friends traveled confronting environmental problems and social ills, reflecting the very different cultural climate of the early 1970s. Yogi's Space Race appeared in 1978. The new Yogi Bear Show debuted in 1988, the same year Daws Butler died, making it the last series to feature his original voice performance. Yogi's Treasure Hunt, Yo Yogi, and numerous holiday specials filled the decades between. The 2021 HBO Max series Jellystone, created by C.H. Greenblatt, brought Yogi and dozens of other Hanna-Barbera characters into a fully contemporary animated comedy that ran until 2025. It was widely reviewed as one of the more successful Hanna-Barbera revivals, managing to honor the original characters while completely reinventing their context for a new audience. From 1958 to 2025. 67 years. Multiple production studios, multiple voice actors, multiple television eras, the same bear in the same hat, continuously present through every significant shift in American animation and broadcasting. He has outlasted Saturday morning cartoons as a format. He has outlasted several of the networks that aired him. He has outlasted the cultural moment that created him, and he keeps showing up. That kind of durability doesn't happen by accident. It happens when a character touches something in the audience that transcends the specific era of their creation, something that the next generation finds as true as the generation before them did. Yogi Bear hasn't survived 67 years because nostalgia kept him on life support. He has survived because each new audience discovers, with some surprise, that the bear in the hat still makes them laugh.
Every year the Ranger tries something. It's the annual Battle of Wits, boo-boo. Me.
4. Jellystone was a deliberate reference to a real national park. The setting of the Yogi Bear Show, Jellystone Park, where Yogi and Boo Boo resided, and where Ranger Smith spent his career in varying degrees of exasperation, was not a purely invented location. It was a transparent play on Yellowstone National Park, the iconic American wilderness reservation spanning Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. The name substitution was simple and obvious: jelly for yellow. No viewer was expected to miss it, but the choice of a national park as the show's setting was more considered than it might appear. National parks in America represented a specific and inherently comedic social dynamic: the tension between wilderness and organized human leisure. Families arrived from cities with picnic baskets, lawn chairs, and all the conveniences of domestic life, and attempted to enjoy nature while bringing as much of their non-natural world as possible with them. Yogi's picnic basket obsession was a quiet, satirical comment on that dynamic. the bear who refused to simply be a bear, who wore a hat, spoke in full sentences, and pursued baskets rather than foraging, was, in some ways, the perfect American National Park visitor. Someone who showed up at wilderness with specific expectations and was profoundly unwilling to let the wildness simply be what it was. The real-world connection extended further. Yogi Bear's Jellystone Park camp resorts became a nationally franchised chain of family campgrounds, with dozens of locations across the United States offering RV sites, cabins, and water parks under Yogi's branding. A fictional park created to satirize American outdoor leisure culture became a real recreational brand with real paying customers. The joke and the reality traded places, as they often do. There is something almost perfectly circular about this. The show made fun of Americans going to national parks with their comfort foods and their domestic expectations. And then the characters from that show became the mascots for a chain of campgrounds where Americans could go with their comfort foods and their domestic expectations. Yogi Bear spent 60 years mocking the picnic basket and then became the brand image for the place you bring your picnic basket. That's not irony, that's franchise logic.
It's not in the story at all. Under the bed, no. Closet, no. Grandfather clock.
3. Daws Butler voiced more distinct characters than any other voice actor of his era. Yogi Bear was Daws Butler's signature character, but Yogi Bear was one of dozens. Charles Dawson Butler joined Hanna-Barbera in 1957, and what followed was one of the most productive voice acting careers in the history of American animation. For Hanna-Barbera alone, Butler originated the voices of Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss, Elroy Jetson, Wally Gator, Hokey Wolf, and dozens of secondary characters across the studio's productions throughout the 1960s and 1970s. He simultaneously worked for other studios, voicing characters for Walter Lantz Productions and others. What is remarkable is that he did all of this without the benefit of digital editing tools, auto-tuning, or multiple takes spliced together in post-production. Every character was a live vocal performance, constructed and delivered in real time in a recording booth. Each of Butler's characters was genuinely distinct, not variations on the same basic voice, separate, fully realized characterizations. Yogi was modeled on Art Carney's Ed Norton. Huckleberry Hound had a slow Southern philosophical resignation. Snagglepuss, included as one of the segments in the Yogi Bear Show, was a theatrical lion with the specific quality of a stage actor who considers himself above his circumstances. Quick Draw McGraw had a slightly dense Western hero energy. Each one drew from a different reference point, built from Butler's exceptional ear for human performance styles. He was, in the truest sense, a character actor who happened to work entirely in sound. His instrument was his voice, and he played it the way a musician plays an instrument, with technique that looked effortless and wasn't. Butler was also a teacher. In the later years of his career, he ran private coaching sessions for aspiring voice actors, passing on the specific methodology he had developed over 30 years at Hanna-Barbera. Several prominent voice actors who came up in the 1980s and 1990s credit him directly as a formative influence. He understood that voice acting was a craft with teachable principles, not simply a talent that either existed or didn't. And he was generous with what he knew. He died on May 18th, 1988. His last performance as Yogi Bear was in the television film Yogi and the Invasion of the Space Bears. Appropriately, a production that sent his most famous character as far as possible from a Jellystone picnic basket. The timing was bittersweet in a way that felt almost scripted. The voice that had defined Yogi Bear for 30 years went out with Yogi in orbit, as far from Jellystone as the character had ever traveled. When most people remember Yogi Bear, the voice they hear is Daws Butler's. That is the specific, irreducible nature of great voice acting. It makes the character permanent in a way that survives the actor.
But okay, I'll go along with it. Are there any pigs in there? Pigs? We're up to here with pigs.
2. Limited animation changed the economics of television production. Forever. Hanna-Barbera's contribution to American animation wasn't only artistic, it was structural. And the Yogi Bear Show was one of the primary demonstrations of a completely different economic model for producing animation. Before Hanna-Barbera, theatrical animation was built on full animation, every frame drawn fresh, with characters moving through space with naturalistic fluidity. A single short required thousands of drawings. The cost per minute of animation was substantial. Disney's theatrical shorts, the gold standard of the form, required production timelines and budgets that no television broadcaster could have justified for weekly content. Television's economics were completely different. Weekly content required weekly production. Full animation and weekly broadcast schedules were incompatible. Hanna-Barbera's limited animation approach reduced the number of drawings by keeping as much of each frame static as possible. Characters' bodies didn't move when they talked. Backgrounds repeated. The visual complexity of each scene was stripped back to what was essential. Critics sometimes called the result illustrated radio, a description that was not entirely complimentary. The visual richness of theatrical animation was genuinely absent. What replaced it was speed, volume, and a fierce dependence on the quality of the voice performances and writing to carry the emotional weight that the images couldn't. But what limited animation discovered was that character could substitute for movement. If the voices were distinctive enough, if the writing was sharp enough, if the personality was clear enough, audiences would follow a character regardless of how much the character's body was doing on screen. Yogi Bear proved this principle more completely than almost any other character in the Hanna-Barbera catalog. His appeal was almost entirely verbal and personality-driven. Strip away the animation entirely and leave only Butler's voice, and Yogi Bear is still recognizably Yogi Bear, which is the clearest possible evidence that the character lived in the performance, not the picture. Hanna-Barbera's limited animation model became the structural standard for decades of American television animation. From the Flintstones, through Scooby-Doo, through the Saturday morning cartoons that defined childhood entertainment into the 1980s. Every one of them owed a debt to the production methodology being refined in the Yogi Bear episodes of 1961. The economic model that critics dismissed as a shortcut turned out to be the blueprint for an entire era of American popular culture. 1. What Yogi Bear was actually about. And here is the thing that sits underneath all the hat and the collar and the picnic baskets. Yogi Bear is a character who refuses to accept the terms the world has given him. The average bear in Jellystone Park would live quietly in the forest, eat what nature provided, stay out of sight when human visitors arrived. That is what the environment expects. That is what would make Ranger Smith's life significantly easier. That is what would produce fewer complications, fewer failures, and considerably less drama. Yogi has no interest in any of that. He has schemes. He has ambitions. He has a best friend he takes with him everywhere, and a recurring conviction that this time, this specific, well-developed plan is the one that is going to work. And every time it doesn't, he is not broken. He regroups. He tries again next week with equal conviction. Boo Boo serves as the show's voice of conventional wisdom. But Mr. Ranger isn't going to like it, Yogi. He's right every time. The Ranger never likes it. The Ranger always shows up. The plan always fails at the last step. And Yogi always begins the next episode with the same undiminished belief that he is going to succeed. That is, when you look at it clearly, one of the more quietly inspiring character dynamics in American animation. Not because Yogi succeeds, he doesn't, but because the joy he takes in the attempt. The complete refusal to scale back his ambitions to match his actual results. The cheerful insistence that the next plan will be the one that changes everything. It communicates something specific about the value of trying. He told us he was smarter than the average bear. He was wrong by most measurable outcomes, but he kept showing up, kept scheming, kept reaching for that basket with total enthusiasm and complete commitment. 65 years later, we are still watching to see if he is going to get away with it this time. He's not. He never does. And somehow, that's fine, because the reaching is the thing. 12 facts, 1 bear, and a question worth settling. Is Yogi Bear fundamentally an optimist, a fool, or something more complicated than either? Drop your take in the comments. This one genuinely has no wrong answer. Subscribe for more of this. We'll be back next week.